If you've been following my channel for any length of time, you'll know that my Nikon D850 got into a fight with a wave last year and very badly lost, and I've been using a Nikon D750 as a short to medium stand-in camera while I ultimately make up my mind on the direction I want to take with my equipment going forwards. I've made no secret about my ambitions to invest into a mirrorless system at some point during 2020. Now obviously the last few months have been a bit bonkers photography wise, but a tiny benefit to this has been the ability to really think and reflect on my equipment needs going forwards. So I thought I'd put this little video together just to share my thought process and reveal where my equipment journey takes me next. Now I've been a Nikon shooter since 2007. I first started with the D40X, then the D90, the D7000, the D600, the D750, the D850, and then back to the D750. And I absolutely love their cameras, and I can honestly say I don't think I've ever bought one of their camera bodies and been disappointed. But in all honesty, my eye has started to wander to other brands in recent months, and I feel really disloyal saying that, but the 6-year-old D750 that I've got was only ever going to be a stopgap camera, and it's been really difficult to fight off the lockdown-induced boredom tempting me into new and exciting camera purchases. Like most people, I use YouTube extensively for research when I'm buying any new gear. And at the moment, YouTube seems to be awash with lots of negative sentiment towards Nikon. I'm not going to name any culprit channels, but I'm sure you've got a fairly good idea of the channels that I'm talking about. And conversely, YouTube is absolutely full of lots of positive gushing sentiment towards certain other brands, and it's probably warranted, to be honest. But the point is, if you watch enough of these style of videos, then subliminally those messages start to plant themselves in your mind, and I found myself increasingly turned away from Nikon. Basically, the marketing was actually working on me. So I started to research other brands and other camera systems that I could potentially move to. The first one that I looked at was Sony, and specifically I looked at the A7R Mark III and IV, and looking at the spec list, they looked absolutely phenomenal, and I've got no doubts that they're absolutely incredible cameras, but for whatever reason, the prospect of moving there just didn't excite me. It just didn't resonate with me on an emotional level. It's hard to articulate why, but it just didn't feel like the right move for me. So I ruled Sony out. I then started looking at the Fuji X-T4, which is just been released in the last month or so, and that looks like basically the perfect crop sensor camera. It's very difficult to fault it, full stop. But again, I ended up ruling it out because I do a lot of low light shooting, and it was very difficult for me to step away from full frame sensors to those crop sensors given the importance that I place on low light capabilities. So I ended up ruling that out as well. And then finally I looked at Canon as a potential brand that I could switch to, and specifically I liked the look of the mythical R5, which is due out in the next couple of months, and that looks like a near perfect full frame camera. Its video specs look absolutely insane, and the Canon RF lenses look particularly epic as well. So really it looked like that system had everything I needed. But then I think I felt like ultimately I was starting to get carried away with it all, and in a moment of clarity and realization, a lightning bolt kind of hit me from above. I halted myself, I put the brakes on, and I started to ask myself some very simple but very important questions. Question 1. Can I actually afford to switch to the Canon R5 and RF lenses? No, never, not in a million years, particularly in these really uncertain times. I'd have to sell one of my kidneys, or probably even both of my kidneys, to make it happen. No chance. And question 2, why did I actually want to make the switch? And it sounds like a simplistic question, but when I started to think about it rationally and logically, I could not actually make a case for why I wanted it. The 8K that's in the R5, the flagship spec, I don't need 8K, I don't even shoot 4K. This computer behind me would spontaneously combust simply on sight of those 8K files. Not gonna happen. 4K 120. I don't even shoot slow-mo at 1080p currently. I don't need it. High frame rates for stills. I don't need it for landscape photography. The rumoured 45 megapixel sensor, I don't think it's confirmed at the moment, but that's what people are thinking it's gonna be. Looks nice, but there's nothing overly unique in the camera market. There's plenty of other bodies out there that have got similar spec sensors. So literally, I couldn't actually name anything that the Canon switch would give me that made it and warranted it as an actual move to make. The reassuring truth at the end of this all is that it is very much a game of diminishing returns for camera manufacturers when it comes to differentiating themselves on photography specs. That is precisely the reason why they're all trying to differentiate themselves when it comes to video specs. And what that means is, for the majority of photographers who have simple video needs, and specifically landscape photographers like me and probably like you, it makes absolutely no difference what camera system you buy. It makes very, very little difference. All of these cameras are superb, and I'd be lucky to own any of them. Fuji, Sony, Olympus, Canon, Nikon, etc. They're all fantastic. And really, I think ultimately I got swept away in the intoxicating excitement of buying shiny new things. When I was truly honest with myself, I came to the understanding that the main motivation for wanting to upgrade from the D750 was actually that I lusted over the sensor in my old deceased D850, understandably, because that is an absolutely legendary camera. And it just so happens that Nikon actually produce a mirrorless camera body that has the same sensor that's in the D850. So I get that beautiful sensor, but all the benefits of mirrorless and the future proofing of mirrorless, etc. And that is precisely the camera body that I have just invested in. And it's called the Nikon Z7, and that is my new camera. I had to sell a whole load of gear, so I've had to make some sacrifices, and I only picked this up secondhand on eBay because it was the only way I could afford it. But from a little bit of manoeuvring with my gear, I've managed to make the upgrade that I wanted without having to sacrifice one or both of my kidneys in the process. I've chosen to stick with Nikon. Is this camera body perfect? No, I don't think it is, but frankly I don't think such a thing actually exists. But when I look at the main critiques of this camera body and the Z system full stop so far, a lot of them are warranted, but they don't actually concern me specifically that much. And when I look at my exact needs as a landscape photographer, I think this camera body is as close to perfection as I'm likely to get at this moment at a time, at a price point that I can actually afford. It gives me a high dynamic range, high megapixel sensor, probably still one of the best sensors out there. IBIS is very powerful for video, it's lightweight, it's weather sealed, it's got great battery life. The Nikon ergonomics are fantastic, and I'm very much at home with them. The video capabilities are powerful and matched to my actual needs, so I'm not going to have lots of specs in there that I'm not actually using, like 8K. And the Z mount glass as well looks fantastic. It's really important whenever you invest in any new system to look at the lenses just as much as the camera bodies, if not more, because the lenses are really so important. And I think Nikon's lightweight and compact f4 glass looks fantastic from a landscape photography point of view, but also importantly through the FTZ adapter I can use my old F-mount glass as well. And generally, because this camera body and system has been out now for approaching 2 years, you can pick up very competitive deals on second-hand equipment out there. What more could I want, really? I did actually consider whether it would be smart to try and play the long game and wait for whatever camera system is released by Nikon to supersede this, the Z8 or whatever it's going to be. But the same two questions arose in my head. One, how would I actually afford this new system when I can't pick it up secondhand? It would be a struggle. And then two, more importantly, what was I actually waiting for in a Z8 that the Z7 couldn't give me right now? And I couldn't think of anything. As they say, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Now, some people might say, are you not worried that Nikon might disappear in the near future? And from a gear perspective, no, not really, because if Nikon disappear, my equipment that I have doesn't just vanish into thin air. I've still got it, I can still use it. Now obviously, on an emotional level, I don't want Nikon to disappear at all. But we have to look at this logically. All camera manufacturers are struggling out there, so Nikon aren't uniquely in this position. A lot of these brands out there are in this really turbulent area currently. And when we actually focus on what really matters, Nikon produce fantastic cameras that create fantastic images that perfectly suit my requirements. Everything else is noise, and there really isn't any point wasting energy on worrying about things that I can't actually control. In summary, I think it's really easy to get carried away in all the hype and gear bullshit that's out there on YouTube and totally lose focus about what really matters for you. Am I switching? Am I not switching? Camera X versus camera Y versus camera Z? Who gives a shit? All these modern cameras are fantastic. Simply pick the one that suits your needs and enjoy it. Life is far too short to worry about camera brands.